Mayor, thank you. Well, in light of the comments made by the Deputy Mayor, my question to Paul might be a little redundant but I'll ask it regardless. What would the deadline be in order to determine whether or not we could move forward with this? Because you brought up a couple of scenarios where we might have a major sponsor. There was some other questions in there. And again, this question may be redundant because if the consensus of my colleagues is that we're not going to proceed with it, then so be it. But at least, or are we at that point now where the deadline is today is to make that determination?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would think the deadline is today because I know in speaking with the consultant that she would be trying to get the sponsorships now. There are still some businesses, and there's one that she's looking at that may still have sponsorship money left in, say, this year's budget for hasn't been used. But with regards to getting the advertising out, a lot of the major publications like Festivals Ontario, TWEPI, all of these types of things, they're starting to now get into printing their books, their summer tourism books. So to go much longer, we'd miss out on a lot of that advertising, as well as an early start on the sponsorship. But I apologize for using the words difficult because actually I think that regardless of the merit, it is. I think that the format is simpler than the format was last year. I think that you were looking at a very large budget, $50 tickets for a public event is, what we're proposing here is a lot simpler. We had also talked about, while no admission charge, you could use a volunteer group could take so much at the gates. There are things that would be done differently this year, lower cost things that may improve participation. But again, as was said, administration are 50-50 on it. But I will say that this budget is achievable, and just leave it there.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Paul, there is no need to apologize. I feel like sooner I get your honesty, and that's what I would much rather have in our working relationship between council and staff. So no, there is definitely no need to apologize. To me, that is an undercurrent of how you're feeling, and that's exactly what I appreciate. So no, there was nothing meant by it, but sooner that I was picking up on it, that lack of enthusiasm on all of our parts, and I think probably because we were burned to a degree for the first year by natural circumstances, and then this year by it was almost another perfect storm, only it was the events and people and relationships and personalities, and it just spiraled down from there. So no, definitely no need to apologize.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Worship. In response to Deputy Mayor's comments here today, yeah, I'm still unconvinced. And since we had this discussion about 3 weeks ago, the feedback that I've gotten from the public while out and about has been the same that I had 3 weeks ago. That we should put a stop to this going forward. I don't think had there been buy-in from the public, I'd be behind it. But I think the numbers speak for themselves. That is the evidence that there isn't buy-in from the public. Major sponsor was huge. Had we had somebody come forward, I'd reconsider. But no, I haven't changed my position. I'm still the opinion this one should be striked from the budget. That's my opinion.
Mr. Neufeld?
I'll preface my comments by saying I'm not going to try and convince council otherwise, but I want to take it back to a couple of things. One, what was the purpose of having the event in the first place? It was not really to throw a party. It was about tourism and economic development, and especially trying to entice people to come down to our waterfront. So from that perspective, I think that there was value and we were successful because there were a lot of people that came down to see what was going on. Was it financially successful? That's a different question. The reason I say this is because I want to make sure that those people in administration, especially, who have gone out on a limb and trying something new, don't feel now that they should feel badly about the attempt at trying something new. Because of all of the things that we have tried over the course of the last 3.5 years, this is one of the very few things that didn't work out as well as we had hoped. And it's important for people to understand that it's okay to take risks and it's okay to fail. We'll learn from these things. But I don't want a chilling effect. I guess that's my point. I don't want a chilling effect on administration. People worked very hard at trying to get this to work. The discussions you're having here today, we have had numerous times at our senior management table. What is it that we're trying to accomplish? And the last time we had this discussion, I reminded council that we are going to be opening the pedestrian pier this summer, and that this might be an enticement to getting people down there. But even as I say that, and as I thought about it afterwards, perhaps the pedestrian pier is something that's going to entice people to the waterfront regardless, and we believe that it is. It's unfortunate that we haven't seen the public strongly support the sip and savor concept. I'd be interested to know that of the number of people that council members have spoken to who have spoken negatively about sip and savor. I'd like to know how many of them actually purchased tickets and went down to try and support it. Because, you know, given the negative feedback, if all of those people who had negative feedback actually bought tickets and went down there, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion. But that being said, is it worthwhile going forward from the basis of tourism and economic development? That's where we started this thing. And as you heard the mayor say, he knows you're not going to get a large argument from administration except to say this, that the first year got blown out. And so really what we've had is 1 year. What Paul has come up with is a simplified process. And while I did mention that we were going to focus on entertainment, that was from the perspective of enticing people to come to the event. The majority of the budget was still based on the culinary experience. So I just wanted to clear that up. It doesn't make any difference with respect to the decision. I just thought those comments need to be made. First and foremost, I don't want there to be a chilling effect on the administration who are trying to be innovative and creative in finding new ways of promoting our town. And, you know, when we started this, we hoped that it would be successful and that we would then hand it off to some service groups who would carry on with it. We haven't seen that kind of interest either materialize. So, this decision and administration is in council's hands. It's hard for us to recommend that we spend that kind of money on something that hasn't produced what we were hoping it to do.
Councillor Verbicki.
For the mayor, thank you. Just what if? I mean, we have this consultant here, and she put in a report. What if we get this money from the event? Now, can we use it on this amphitheater project that's potentially been on the table, or is it just earmarked for sip and savor? Is it earmarked for that weekend?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the money for amphitheater, that's set aside for amphitheater, it's not a revenue versus expense. It's a cost. It's about putting off events at the park. I don't know if that...
No, I don't think you heard my question. Did you hire a consultant to write a report to get funding from the government?
Correct.
And what happens if we get that money from the government and we don't have this event? Can we use it for this maybe new event for the music festival at the amphitheater?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe we could. The money was specifically for the sip and savor, yeah. Yeah. But, sorry, and that money was not included in the revenue line item in the budget, so. Yeah. Well,
So I'm going to be contrarian here. I still think we should give it a shot. I kind of like the planning that you had sent us previous to budget deliberations. I see year one as something that we just have to forget about. Year two, we all know a number of reasons why it was such a mess. I still think it's a great idea. I think it's a great thing to be doing on our waterfront. I think it's a great way to promote Leamington. So I'm still in favor with it. I'm not worried. I think we can have a really great event this year as long as Mother Nature cooperates. So I have no qualms in moving ahead. I can't give up after 1 year. So year one got knocked out by a storm. I have to discount it. So 1 year of solid effort. Well, almost solid effort. But that's where I am. So, Councillor Jacobs?
I thank you, Worship. In regards to Peter's comments, I think setting a chilling effect to administration isn't that at all. I believe that, use the old adage, nothing ventured, nothing gained. In this particular case, and you make comment about someone paying to go to the event rather than just making a comment. So a couple that I got were at the event, they bought tokens, they went home with tokens. They were so displeased with it. So, I mean, that's some individuals. Others had a great time, I presume. It all depends who goes where. I think we need something, but I don't think sip and savor is the answer to what we're looking for. We want to promote, we want to move forward, we want to attract individuals. I believe opening the pier is going to be a big one. How do we enhance that? Maybe, put music festivals on the pier or something, or, I don't know. I just think there needs to be a change. The sip and savor branding, to me, didn't work. I don't know if it will work because it has that stigma attached to it now, bad feeling or whatever. I think it's great. We just have to come up with another idea. And going back to your earlier comments, I give a lot of kudos to the staff, the amount of individuals that were down there working and volunteering their time on this. It's fantastic because their heart is into it. I just think we had the wrong venue to go with it. And that comes.
And then just finally for me, too, if we're going to move that $100,000 out of that sip and savor and put it towards a concert down at the waterfront, I'm not opposed to that either. So, Deputy Mayor?
Well, then I would make that motion that we do that however you do. I would like to strike sip and savor from the budget and take that money and move it towards the amphitheater, towards a production or / productions at the amphitheater. As I said, my train of thought is that's what we need to build on.
Okay.
That's fine. We can just check with Laura because I think the amount is specific that she has for that.
Okay. So the actual specific amount is what I'm being directed to ask you.
Most definitely. The taxation demand for sip and savor included in the tourism budget is $76,550 because there is that $25,000 worth of revenue. So that would be transferred. Right now we have all of the amphitheater funding for the community programming events included in the library and culture budget. So there is already an amount of $100,000 in library and culture, so that would be added to that to
Correct.
provide for community events.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're
Yeah.
getting at. So 76,560. Okay. Peter?
I'd like to make a suggestion about, I understand what council is suggesting here, and I like the idea. And it's just a suggestion. I'm looking to my senior team as well. Rather than putting it into the cultural budget, there is also something inside of the CAO's budget called the CAO initiatives. Maybe if we put it in there, that is something that council then, if there's a particular concert or initiative that council would like to do, rather than doing it through the culture budget, we can do it through the CAO's budget. That would be my suggestion. Let's put it under the CAO's initiatives budget.
I think you should put it under the mayor's budget,
Well, then we don't have control
since
over
I
it.
don't have one.
Then you'd be the entertainment, you're not willing to pay 76,000.
I'd take that. I could get a year off. So, I'm sorry, before I go to Councillor Wilkinson, there was a motion placed by the deputy mayor, and actually I shouldn't have let you comment until, yeah, you seconded the motion, so now we have Peter's comment to go along with that. Advice would be to, friendly amendment to
Yes,
that motion?
I'm happy
Okay,
to do
to
that.
put
But,
that-
but earmarked for amphitheater entertainment.
Correct, okay. Now to Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. I'm just wondering how this will play out here next year, though. I'm in support of the way you're setting that up there, Deputy Mayor. But will we see a report come back to us in the new year with possible scenarios? Like, I think we need to put some thought into this. Maybe we say we don't want to be involved in the business of festivals, whatever. Maybe this would be a good opportunity to RFP this thing out with some different, I think of the Rotary, Lions, whoever, to get them involved here somehow. But somebody might jump all over this thing if it's an entertainment concert idea at the amphitheater after the success we've seen on that hill. So that's the only thing I'd like to put out there.
Yeah, Mr. Neufeld?
We being senior members of the senior management team, and I have already had some discussions with a promoter, somebody who is in this business, looking at how we're going to best utilize the amphitheater to bring in events and concerts. We've also talked about how are we going to rent out the amphitheater. So, for example, was it just yesterday when the Mayor's Youth Advisory was in, they had the idea of having a music festival. We are just now starting to put together the structure, the process, the policies and procedures on how we're going to rent that and to whom and what would the costs be. And we're seeking some advice from people who are in the game. So we've already started that aspect of it. Certainly if there are opportunities for service groups to get involved, we will certainly entertain that as well.
Let me think. Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. Just for clarification from my own point of view here, the recommendation that it go to the CAO's office, now this will be held sort of in trust until council or something comes back to council? They give their okay prior to it going anywhere else? Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Hammond?
Mayor, thank you. And Councillor Wilkinson put up my sentiments exactly. Going back to one of Peter's comments, and I too want to say that I don't think anyone is blaming, in fact, thanking administration for all that they've put into the Sip and Savor event. I can remember Brenda 2 years ago running down there in the rain trying to park cars and help people, so we all know how much effort went into that. And again, I think we owe them a debt of gratitude for what they've done. And again, back to what Councillor Wilkinson said, I think that now that we're going to move forward and have something at the amphitheater, let's see how many, and you've already touched on that, Peter, how many interested service clubs are interested in putting this on.
And Councillor Dunn?
Through you, Your Worship. Seeing as we have already earmarked $100,000 for the amphitheater, and I love the idea with the amphitheater, there's a lot of people talking about how can we get that better generated. And the fact is, though, the pier's opening up and we have that lands. I would say that, in my thought, there should be an opportunity for somebody to be able to utilize either of those. A small little, on the pier, having a little small concert there, or that the little lands allowing fish fry or something along those lines. Keeping our minds open to a lot of different things, just not only the amphitheater. That was just my thought, and by having it in the CAO's budget, maybe there's some other opportunities there to get them down to the waterfront you're talking about. Yes, we spent that big money, but we already allotted money for the amphitheater. Maybe we could do a little other venues there. That's what my thoughts are.
Yep. Always, it's that, basically is what that tag on that money in the budget will be. So if council says, hey, instead of spending it on a concert at the amphitheater, we want to do something different with it somewhere, we have that option, but that's a report that will come back to us. Deputy Mayor?
I'm sorry, but that was not my intention. I don't want it frittered away.
No.
On other things, I would like to see if you want a signature event sponsored by council at the amphitheater. Those other things can be done through the tourism office or economic development or whatever else. But this money for Sip and Savor, I would like it earmarked for a special
At the amphitheater.
thing at the
Okay.
amphitheater. That was what I was saying in my
In your motion?
in my
Okay.
motion.
All right.
Yes, that other is fine, but that's not what I want this, because this was supposed to be a big splash.
Yep.
And yeah, we're not blaming anybody, and I think we're all in this game. We've all been, from the beginning of this term, been more than willing to jump in and try stuff. I think you know that. We've got your backs on that kind of stuff, and vice versa. And that's why I believe we can move on to something else. If you see it isn't working, you might as well move on. That's all we're doing. But I want that Sip and Savor replaced with a signature event sponsored by council, basically,
Okay.
at the amphitheater.
All right, Mr. Neufeld?
Well, I believe in giving credit where it's due, and I'm going to ask Mr. Sharon to expand on an idea that he has had, and because I think it. No, and if it doesn't work, it's my idea.
Yes.
No, I think it's great, Rob.
Yes.
I'd like you to.
Sure. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Patterson. Just as we're having these discussions, and one of the considerations that we could look at is having an amphitheater grand opening party, essentially, where we number of different ways of approaching it, but you could put out a request for proposal from a promotion company to put the event together, get the acts, do all the entertainment, and have a really big free community event to get everybody out to see the facility. It'll likely get a lot of coverage, and then it would certainly help promote the ongoing programming at that amphitheater for the remainder of the year, because that $100,000 will likely serve 8 to 10 events, so there'll be much smaller events, but it'll gain a lot of attention. So.
We can still do that through.
Yes.
And we could still do that through the CAO's initiative budget, but that would satisfy almost all of the ideas.
Deputy Mayor?
I was assuming, though, that when you get a fairly big name band, if you will, or act, or whatever, it's not going to cost you $10,000. It's going to cost substantially more than that.
Yes.
So that was my idea, reasoning of putting that kind of money into, say, one event. I'm fine with this, but I would really like something splashy. No, not John Tesh either.
Yes, please. Here comes the motion.
That $76,550 from the tourism and culture budget be transferred to the CAO initiatives budget and earmarked for a signature event at the amphitheater.
Okay. Mover and seconder, okay with that? Okay. Discussion on the motion? All in favor? Motion carries. Moving on to economic development.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. The Economic Development Office is responsible for planning, managing, streamlining, and providing oversight of the municipality's economic development programs and initiatives for business retention and expansion, promotion, and marketing. Staffing includes the Manager of Economic and Community Development, James Cox, who you all met last night. For the 2018 budget year, the key focus of economic and community development will be on building relationships with business owners, entrepreneurs, service providers, and community partners and stakeholders in Leamington. The department will also represent Leamington's interests through participation in various local, county, provincial, and/or federal committees that directly promote economic development in the region. While business attraction is an important aspect of economic development, resources in this area will only be deployed when opportunities present themselves, which means that our focus is going to be on Leamington existing businesses, expansion and retention. In 2018, the Economic and Community Development Department will assume full responsibility for the administration of the Community Improvement Program. The manager will chair an internal committee of staff from planning and engineering that will review applications quarterly and make recommendations to council for approval. The manager will also enhance promotion of the program in an effort to increase participation. Also for 2018, the Economic Development Department will provide council with an annual report, which will be an economic snapshot for the municipality. This report will be generated by consolidating readily available statistical information from internal and external sources such as permit activity, permit value, business licensing, taxation, real estate statistics, etc., into a single comprehensive format which can then be presented in subsequent years. And I know James is just new, to the position, but James had some ideas in the interview as well. There's some different things that we think that we'll bring to council with James's help. Things like a new guide for business to assist new businesses finding their way through the permitting process. So I think again, our focus, I think, is going to be on Leamington. And I'm sure James will be a great asset for that. So that's what I had for that budget. I don't think from a financial standpoint there's anything significant. In fact, there's simply just reductions in the overall budget.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Worship. Paul, I've got an issue with the one statement you have here. While business attraction is an important aspect of economic development, resources in this area will only be deployed when opportunities present themselves.
Yeah.
Do we not go out and trying to attract? Are we waiting for someone to come in here and knock on our door and say, hey, I want to get business? Or am I reading this in the wrong context?
We're not going to be traveling to various conferences and places to set up booths and attract businesses that really don't have an interest or we have a low percentage of getting. I think our focus is really, when those present themselves, new businesses and opportunities come to our attention, we're going to go after them. But I think we're going to be more focused on, for this year, more focused, because I think James being new, it's important to establish those relationships within our community right now and reestablish those relationships. We're not giving up on, I didn't mean it in the sense that we are going to give up, but we're not really dedicating any funding towards it. But if opportunities do come up, we will seek them out. Yeah.
And I respect your thoughts on that, but we are such a diversified community here with the agricultural produce, the greenhouse systems, the farming techniques that take place and so forth. Like maybe manufacturers that are outside of our area that would be a perfect fit for the type of industry that we have here. Like, I would love to see them go out and say, hey, think about doing it in this particular area for us, because here's where your market would be. I guess that's what I'm looking at too.
And I think
get out and hustle a little bit. I guess wait till somebody. I've always had the aspect. Wait till somebody comes in your door. You're gonna have a lot of dust on your door. So that's how I look at it. Thank you.
Yeah.
If I could, in all these years that we've been funding that other organization, that is actually their mandate is to do business attraction, because they're operating on a $2 million a year budget, whereas we're operating on $145,000. So as much as you would love to go out and chase to attract new business, how much do you want to love it? Do you want to spend $300,000, $500,000? Because it takes a lot of money to go out and do that business attraction. And that's why when the professional economic development officers say you spend 80% of your time focused on business retention and expansion and 20% on attraction, you have much more wins. And when you say we're so diverse here, it's those industries that already exist that when we make it available for them, if we can get that sewer line out there and in the other developed areas, we make it attractive for them to say to their suppliers, hey, you should come move here to Leamington so you're closer to us. They do the attraction for us. So that's where this is all coming from.
And I appreciate that. But if you're looking at the individuals that are supposed to be doing this for us, they did. but 99.9% of it went west of us.
No argument
Wasn't
here.
focused in this particular area.
No-
I think
no
we brought
argument.
that out
Yep.
before.
Mhm.
None of us are happy.
Nope.
You know, I'd rather give them gas money and say, hey, run down to 401, you know, for 50 miles and see if you can shake up something. But I know where you're coming from, and I wholeheartedly respect that. I guess where I'm going with it is, if we become aware of an industry that would, I guess, support what we have here, then we go out, maybe knock on their door. I'm not saying go out every day and on the highway, no.
No, but that's, yeah,
I-
okay, all right. Mr. Neufeld?
The numbers I've read are even higher than 80%. It's 95% of business, of economic development is business retention and expansion. I'm normally a very optimistic person, so when I say this, bear that in mind. I don't think there's much that we could do to attract a company to come to Leamington if they hadn't already decided that they wanted to come to Leamington. And our greatest ambassadors are going to be the businesses that are already here who are expanding and staying. And that's why we're putting our money into business retention and expansion, and I think the focus is right. That's why we're putting our money into infrastructure, because that's what's going to attract the businesses here. No white knight is going to come into Leamington because we had somebody going up and down the 401. If somebody calls us and says we're interested in coming to Leamington, we are going to do everything that we can to encourage them to continue to consider Leamington. But I really don't think there's anything that we're going to do beyond providing the proper infrastructure, a professional contact person, and good businesses in Leamington. Beyond that, I don't think that we're going to attract anybody to Leamington who hasn't already decided that this is a tremendous place to be, which it is.
Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, Councillor Jacobs, but I think it's a department of one, really, and I want to focus, and I'm cognizant of focusing on things that we can, areas that we can deliver on, and you know, to set goals that we know that we can achieve at the end of the day, concrete things like the reports, participation in the Development Services Committee, and you know, providing assistance to entrepreneurs and businesses that are trying to get back to the core, you know, of what an economic development, a single person can do. And a lot of the prospecting and things like you were talking about, sure, I mean, when we hear of an opportunity and somebody is interested, we'll go after them. But what I'm talking about is going out there and attending all of these conferences and trade shows and different manufacturers and stuff with, you know, saying who we are, and as Peter had said, that you know, if they're not thinking about it already, it's difficult to attract. But no question, you know, a piece of what you're saying, yeah, if we hear of things, we should be going after. But I don't want to. I think it was the mayor of Ottawa I heard one time said a person who has 100 priorities has none, and I just don't want to spread this position thin, doing a lot of different things. I do want to focus on things that we can deliver on.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further to that, Paul, it's going to take James some time to get acquainted with our area and acquainted with our business people. So even that in this first year, I think we have to cut the department some slack, if you will. It'll be a learning procedure for everyone. But I do want to say that I like the idea of having the Economic Development Officer assume full responsibility for the CIP. That is another great way to get involved with the players. And perhaps an easier, maybe a better contact person than pulling people out of planning and so on. So this position is a natural position for business people to go to. So I think that's a really good move. I didn't see it coming. So when I saw it in here, I thought, oh, that's a great idea. So anyway, even if we go forward the way this is, you've got this outlined, and if we're all sitting around this table next year, we might see, and you may already see another direction, and James himself see another direction to take this, or to expand it further. So for the time being, I think this is a good way to approach it, and a good way to start out. So just my thoughts.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, but the planning will still, because there's still planning aspects of the CIP, expanding the boundary, all those things will still fall under planning, but the actual review of applications and the distribution of funding and those type of things will all come under James, and you know, in the municipality that I worked, that was the way we did it. The economic development person or business person was responsible for the funding or for that program itself. So it's just the same as what we had, and it did work very well. So.
Okay, so my perspective on this is I think this budget is way too thin. And I know that's a terrible thing to say when I'm sitting up here spending taxpayers' money, but in all the years that we have tried to have an economic development office or whatever, and our tourism office, whatever you want to call it, we've never really had, in my opinion, a really good, meaty budget for that person or persons to do the jobs that you hope they can do. And it's not really meant as a criticism, it's just an observation. I know James is new, but it's my hope that our previous EDO left a lot of the information and work here at our office that he won't have to do that she did in the first place. I'm going to, you guys are going to have to deal with that, not me. Because there was a lot of legwork being done in the last few years, and I'm hoping, like any employee in any department, I don't want to keep starting at the beginning each time. I'm hoping that we're building the reserve of information and data and details that as the new person comes in, they can start here and keep moving up. So I guess, Paul, I'm just saying, I look at $12,000 for business retention. I mean, that's the only real thing in there that I see as any kind of not discretionary funds, but I don't know what other word to use, that our new EDO will have to do the jobs that, like Councillor Jacobs is and we're all talking about, either meeting with and entertaining, or talking with existing businesses or potential businesses or whatever. Mm-hmm. So just a question if...
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hear you, and it does seem a little thin, but I do think that sometimes, though, if things do come up, we find a way, and I think we will. You know, if something comes up here, it was hard to predict, and with James here now, there may be things that he may want to do that we didn't think of. So between here and the tourism budget, sometimes the two of them are really could even be combined into one, but. My experience so far is this year, when things came up of that nature and they weren't budgeted, we found a way.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Neufeld?
And with respect to your comment about the budget being a little bit thin, it probably is a little bit thin, but let's give time for things such as our investment in infrastructure, time to get in the ground. When that happens, I suspect that we will see economic development in our industrial lands. And when that happens, our economic development manager may need a heftier budget. So I think that you may see that in future years, but let's just wait until we get the infrastructure in the ground and push some of those new initiatives.
Well, I was going to suggest I know where I could find about $132,000 a year to contribute towards it, and even in the tourism budget, probably another $93,000 a year. But we'll wait on that. Okay, so if there are no more questions on that particular budget, then we'll move on to building.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be doing this one as well. Bashara had a building code meeting off-site, so thought he would have been back, but he thought we were till tomorrow morning. Building Services is responsible for the enforcement of the Ontario Building Code Act. The primary responsibility is to ensure that the health and safety of the public is maintained through adherence to those requirements in the construction or use of every building in the municipality. Building Services staff includes manager of building services and CBO, and 3 building inspectors and a building technician. So for the current year, a total of more than 410 building permits were issued worth $152 million in construction value. Residential was valued at $35 million, creating 190 units. Commercial was valued at $6.5 million, agriculture at $100 million, industrial at $5.7 million, and institutional at $8 million. Total building permit fees and related revenues amounted to over $1 million. The total value of construction for the year of 2017 is largely increased from previous years, mainly due to the increase in residential, institutional, and agricultural permits, while the remaining categories have shown increases in the construction activities from the previous year. I just focus your attention to the table, and you see the totals from year to year. I think that sometimes with building inspection, I think I said it, or building services, I think I said it last year, sometimes the focus can't be on the numbers of permits because it's the complexity of those permits. Some permits only require one inspection, and it counts as one permit, but a permit for a home or a more complex a permit may require 5 and 6 and 10 inspections. So sometimes can't focus on the number of permits even though they're going up, but what you'll see with the values going up is the complexity of these permits are going up. So it's driving things like, it's driving up our numbers of inspections and things that we do. So just take note of that, because these are, a lot of these permits that we said are in the residential and industrial and institutional. For 2018, construction activities are expected to continue to be on the rise due to the elimination of the development charges and fees and the availability of a large number of developed lots. Also, new proposed subdivisions are in the review process. Therefore, administration is forecasting over 90 residential dwelling units to be constructed in 2018. Construction activity will remain strong in many sectors, in particular the residential and agricultural, as the projected development will equal last year's value. The 2017 changes to the Ontario Building Code came into effect July 1st, and more changes are scheduled to take effect in the 2018 OBC. Building staff are working together through our local building official chapter to hold seminars, presentations, training courses to address those changes. And you'll see in the budget there is an increase in training because of these new requirements. Although building staff have met legislative requirements regarding current ministry qualifications, cross-training is required to ensure all building inspectors are able to perform all mandatory inspections in the absence of any one inspector, and that's something we need to focus on when we have staff changeover or people are out or on vacation. There is, and Danielle will talk about it in planning, but there is a new position that's being created and shared between that I didn't mention in here, but it is a new position that's being created and shared between planning services and building inspection. With the numbers of inspections that we're getting and the higher volume of work, those things are getting done. Those things in the front, those inspections and everything that the proponents or developers need from us are getting done. But it's in the background, things are just not. We've things that have to get scanned in, and there's a lot of things that aren't getting done. And we feel this position shared between the two will help in that backlog. And you'll hear from Danielle that things have really increased in the planning department as well. And on the capital side, I think I didn't look at that. On the capital side, I think is replacement of one vehicle, which is the 4x4 that we had.
Thanks very much. Questions from council? Mr. Neufeld.
Just for clarification, because part of that position will be involved in the building side, the funding for part of that position will come through the building reserve, which comes out of our building charges. We can't have too much money sitting in our building reserve, because then it appears that, well, not appears, we don't want to be seen to be overcharging for the services. We have this work that needs to be done. It's being generated through the building department, and this is an appropriate place to spend our reserve to make sure we have the people in there. So the effect on taxation is reduced because we're using the building reserve.
Okay, Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. Is this the position that's been advertised, like yesterday came out? Is that it?
No, sorry, we're anticipating one retirement this year, so rather than, and we needed the extra resources, so rather than fill part-time, we're now going to go out and hire a full-time building inspector, and should there be a retirement at the CBO level, then we will then advertise for that position. So we will carry a surplus until the retirement possibly occurs.
Okay. Mr. Neufeld?
We are fairly certain there will be a retirement at the CBO level in 2018. We just don't have a date down yet. But given the amount of work, again, this surplus extra position that we'll have to create the succession planning process will be paid for, again, out of the building reserve. So there's no effect on taxation, and it is an appropriate use of the building reserve fund.
Okay. So my quick comment on here just is on that table on page 90. And even though the naysayers try to pick away at these numbers, when I post them in social media, when you go from $37 million in investments up to $155 million in a 5-year period, we've obviously done something right here, and that's something that all of us can hang our hats on with great pride, both at the council level and the administrative level. You know, basically doing 4 times what we did on average in the years past. So this is awesome. This is great news.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's difficult, and I just want to make that point because I had a previous council would simply look at the building permit numbers, but you really got to look at what those numbers are. And in this particular case, it's driven by, residential units that require multiple inspections and the commercial and industrial. It's not 410 sheds. They're significant numbers.
Yep. Yeah. Very much so. So, no questions on that part. Then we will move on to planning. Yes. There we go.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. So as council is aware, the planning department is responsible for processing all of our Planning Act applications, so our zoning amendments, our official plans. We saw some here last night. We also are involved in special projects, our CIPs, that type of thing. And we are also involved in long-range planning, and so our policy documents, OP, that type of thing. So that's what we're doing. We are also the liaison for our Committee of Adjustment as well as the Heritage Advisory Committee, so two very important committees within the municipality. Planning as well has continued to have a second year of a very, very busy development review. We're continuing to double those numbers. And I think I can say that we are on top of that backlog due to our current staff complement. So we've been able to, we're still getting a lot of proposals, we're still reviewing them. It still takes a long time to get through a planning process, but we've been able to respond more timely and get through a streamlined process. So the planning budget does include the salaries for the director, the manager of planning, a development planner, and a junior planner, which have both become permanent positions in 2017. This year, we were fortunate to have a contract planning assistant who really has been able to help us call back people at the very least, and at the very most, help us deal with file administration. And we're now to the point where we're actually proactive with what we're doing. So that's been a great improvement. Paul's noted that we will share, or it's proposed that we share that position with the building department as a permanent position to keep us our heads above water in that administrative function. The 2018 budget also includes our summer student, which we've been very fortunate to get every year, and HR always helps us look for grants for that. And they're really the ones that push forward any of the things that we are able to achieve in our heritage, with our heritage committee. So that's been an important position. Our ongoing projects, so we're doing a number of projects that will be completed this year. So our OP review, the boarding house study, and the secondary plans are all items that were budgeted in previous years. Those will be finished in 2018. Other projects that are included in the special projects budget line include the funds for the CIP. So we have two items that are to be paid out from approvals that were given in 2016. A little complicated. We're helping the owners get through those two. Those are the two remaining. Of course, Council has just recently approved funding to be released this year. So we've given away some of those approvals, and I'm working with people right now. So that money's also in there. And then we've proposed that monies be made available in 2018 under the current program, so under the current criteria and those types of things. The new projects for 2018 would include revising that CIP program. We've had a number of requests. We now have experience to see what business owners are looking for and perhaps what would get us to our goals and objectives a little bit better. So we look to do that in-house, and then it would also be administered. We've budgeted some to actually, if we get that plan approved, to give grants out that year. And as Paul's noted, that assistance with and working with economic development to be the face out there and get people aware of that program will help tremendously. Other fees and within the budget include our professional fees. So planning has a lot of legal fees. It also includes the researching fees for the Heritage Committee, and then we are proposing that we do a lands appraisal. With development, we collect parkland fees, and that's how the municipality in part funds the development of new parkland. The last appraisal was done at least 10 years ago. We want to make sure that the amounts that we're collecting are current, especially given the amount of development we have now. So that's within our professional fees listed there for 2018.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Oh, Councillor Hammond.
Danielle, I'm sure you're going to anticipate this question. Does the revitalization of the CIP grant include expansion?
So the expansion of the area is something that we'll look at in the new revised plan that we'll work on in 2018. It's something, obviously that topic's come up, so that'll have to be, we'll go through public consultation, we'll work with stakeholders to determine what is the appropriate boundary. So that's part of the 2018 revised CIP budget.
Okay. We're not there yet, I don't think. No, we're not there yet. Still got more to do. So, Danielle, and I know I've thanked you before. I'll thank you again for surviving those years when your department was so thin of employees. And I'm really glad to hear that you've caught up to all the projects that have. I mean, we look at the numbers in the building department. We know that's going right through your office and through our legal office and the accounting office. So, I mean, we're keeping all of you very, very busy. But I'm glad to hear that with all your staff, that the three of you, I shouldn't say all your staff, but the three of you, that you've caught up. But I didn't understand what's proactive. What do you do that's in the planning that's proactive then?
So small things right now. Darian has been able to draft letters to remind people that we're holding $300,000 of their security, that their site plans will expire in a year, and is there anything we can help with? Site plans often fall onto John Pilmer's shoulders, so engineers just phone John and say, what's left? So we've been able to go through those files and see, where are you at? Here's a reminder. We'll be in a position to give you your money back, those types of things.
I see.
We've been able to flag things in the future, so consent applications, again, we've been able to put reminders in our calendars to assist those applicants to say, your approval will expire in a month. You have things that take longer than a month to get done. So we're putting those ahead of it. And it really helps because in the end, those applicants are coming back to us at the last minute going, what can I do? And so those proactive, very small, but it really makes me happy to know that we're
Sure.
to the point where we can be proactive.
Yeah, very good. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Danielle, I'm really liking to see this chart of the numbers of applications. Is there any chance we can get that like at a 6-month mark? Just to see, like, I find this really interesting. It just gives council a better idea. Like, we appreciate and know that you're busy, but this at least gives us an idea, figures. I'm not going to ask for more than that, but if we could get that at the 6-month or even quarterly would be really good. It just, for us to have an idea of numbers gives us a better handle on what the departments are doing. So if that wouldn't create a hardship, I would certainly appreciate that. We've appreciated it from the fire department. Gives us, again, a better idea of what's going across. So if you don't mind, but again, thank you.
Head Councillor Verbeke first.
For the mayor, thanks. I was out of the room to grab a coffee, and I just wanted to make sure, because Bashir always gave us an update, and I'm going to throw Paul a curveball here. How many outstanding building permits do we have now? Are we proactive, like the planning is? I mean, I just want to know where we're at with that, because I have the number in my head from last year, so I just want to see how you're doing.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't give you the number. That was one of the reasons why we're bringing on this position earlier and hiring that permanent position to take care of some of those open files. While we're behind, and you know, when council hears the number, it sounds a lot, but I've been meeting with some other municipalities, and everybody's in the same boat with regards to open permits, because the onus is always on the proponent to call the municipality to come do the final inspection, and there is no incentive for that, for me to call you to come back and do a final inspection. At the very least, MPAC or somebody may get wind that my value has increased. So if I've complied, then I've done. So everybody has that problem. That's no excuse for not following up, but there'll always be open permits. I just don't know. I can't tell you the number, but I can get you that number. But the idea of bringing that position on for that surplus staff is to get at those open permits. But even if we catch up on it, what I'm saying is that there will always be open permits because of the way the process works. Yeah.
Okay. So if there's nothing else in planning, thank you very much, Danielle. Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Hammond did have one.
That's okay, Mayor, thank you. Danielle, I'm pleased, as well as the Deputy Mayor, that you were able to keep Darian on because she's done a great job. I mean, we sit with Darian on Committee of Adjustment, as you know, and she's done a great job. And to the Mayor's point, being proactive, again, back to the Committee of Adjustment, it's nice because, you know, we've had 1 or 2 applications come forward where they haven't completed what they're supposed to do within a year, which means they have to reapply, which means you have to do your work. We have to sit down through Committee of Adjustment, so that's great news. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, sorry to be so rude up here, but we're trying to figure out how to do what next on the agenda. So, no, because there's still another section for that department, but the people we want to be here aren't here. So we're going to skip the Culture and Recreation Services, and we're going to go to Finance, and that will be the end of it today. And then we'll come back tomorrow at 10? Because there's not, you want to get her done early? Okay, 9 o'clock then? Okay, good. We'll leave the schedule as. Okay, well, good luck with that. So, we'll just move to 7.4, Finance. And
Tab 12.
12? Okay, there we go.
Thank you. Thanks for following us around today. We're switching all over. It
Yes,
wasn't
you
going
are.
as planned, but we're doing well.
Not unusual.
That's good.
Oh, yeah.
Police, page 129, please. The OPP provide police services for the municipality under the Purchase of Service Agreement and in accordance with Section 10 of the Police Services Act. The Leamington Police Services Board generally determines objectives and priorities for police services in consultation with the detachment commander or his or her designate. This budget was presented to the Police Services Board in late November. So proposed for 2018, the OPP service contract is estimated at 4.9 million, which is 94% of the total expenditures of this budget. As I mentioned earlier in my opening remarks, this represents 12% of all of our operating costs for the municipality as well. So the budget includes the continuation of the community policing initiative at $5,000 to establish the connections between the police and the community through engagement. In 2017, there was a contribution of $100,000 for annual life cycle replacement toward the police services building, which the municipality does own. This year, it's recommended that $50,000 of that $100,000 be dedicated for capital projects such as lighting replacement, painting, washroom facilities renovations, and floor replacements. In addition, there is included a $50,000 life cycle replacement. I also mentioned in my earlier remarks that the police services reserve includes a contribution of $100,000 for rate stabilization as it relates to policing costs. In 2018, there were adjustments based on the billing model for 2015 and 2016 that were about 88,000. So this will put us in a good position for 2019 to just see some incremental increase and reduce that rate exposure.
Questions? Okay, help me understand it, Laura. We're talking about where did I just read it? An actual reduction. Oh, no, that was, yeah, the 2018 billing model includes adjustments for 2015-16 that totally approximate $88,000 reduction. Is that in this year, or is this are we going back in the records?
So that is applied to our 2018 costs.
Okay,
So there are increases projected in the 2018 billing model.
Right.
Those are reduced by these two reductions relating to prior periods, but it will all be incurred in 2018 or recognized in
Okay.
2018.
so when I look at the 2017 actuals of 4.8 million and the 2018 5.3 million, we've got an increase in police costs, right?
Yeah.
And this reduction of 88,000 is included in that increase.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from council at all? Nope. Then we'll move on to general government.
The General Government Department captures many corporate costs and programs pertaining to the general administration of the municipality rather than specific operational programs or divisions. So this area includes tax levies, associated revenues, and expenditures related to the overall operations of the municipality. In this budget, there are no staffing costs, but there are benefit costs related to post-retirement for retirees, with the exception of police, water, and wastewater departments, for which the retirees' costs are directly in those budget centers. So just to go over the changes from 2017 budget to 2018 budget, on the revenue side, we've included the 1.8 increase to the urban and general tax levy, as well as the 2.5 increase in assessment growth. The difference in reserve transfers is the discounting of the development charges. So you will also see, that was a contribution from the reserve. You'll also see a reduction on the expense side where we're no longer having that discount. For the tax adjustments, that really is based on our predictions of what will be resolved by the end of 2017. We're quite confident that we will be near settling all of the prior assessment appeals for the big box stores. So going forward, we should be looking at only tax write-offs for current year. So all of those settlements should be wrapped up or near wrapped up or reserved for by the end of this year. So there's no reason to raise them again through taxation. So I'm very confident in that number. In the other operating expenses, we have included $100,000 for the salary review related to salaries that was just completed and will be presented to council early in January. And that relates to our pay equity as well as our whole salary review for the corporation. The building maintenance expense is increased by about $25,000 over prior year. I'm very confident in this number, and that relates to the building maintenance here at this building. We have an itemized list of all the work that needs to be done in this facility. In previous years, I think we've really looked at just the trending. So based on our contractual obligations and the increases with Bill 148, that we will expect those increases to, or costs to increase. That's a very reasonable number. And the property maintenance is an increase, is an allocation from Public Works.
Okay.
And that's it.
Questions from council? Councilor Rubicki.
Now, building maintenance, through you, worthy Mayor, is that the cleaning? Is that repairs that need to be done on this building? Or I guess our 5-year HUD warranty is over with, is it?
That would include all of our contracted services for the building. So yes, it would be our cleaning, it's maintenance for example, it got as specific as this wall that moves up and down. It's the annual maintenance that's required there, the elevator maintenance, etc.
Councilor Jacobs.
No, thank you, Worship. Laura, with the impact assessments and the appeals that are put in, are we appealing any of the appeals?
That's an excellent question, and I've talked to my team about doing that and taking a more aggressive role. Certainly, we're seeing some of the big box stores actually come in at lower assessments than we think they should be valued at, and we work with MTE, which I'm not sure what the acronym stands for, but they are a group of paralegals that work on a lot of our provincial appeals, and any appeals over, I think the threshold is $3 million, and they are encouraging us to seek or actively appeal those appeals, for lack of a better word. So yes, we will be looking at doing that in 2018.
You mentioned box stores and so forth, but I'm looking at even residential, or like you're looking at the whole gambit across the board.
That's for sure. We will include it all.
Like, I'm sure we're all familiar with certain individuals or certain homes or certain areas within the municipality that have appealed assessments, won their appeals, but still are way under assessment. So, you know, I guess, to lack of a better phrase, appeal the appeal, right?
If I may, Mayor Patterson, there is a new process with the Assessment Review Board that requires the municipality to be more active as part of their entire process. So we have a team that sits on those appeals. So absolutely moving forward on all of them, we will be involved.
Further questions? Councilor Hammond.
Mayor, thank you again. Laura, we've touched on pay equity a number of times today. I got a 3-part question. Have we had a pay equity exercise done within this building? Who did it, and how much did it cost us?
That was done as part of the salary review. So it was just completed, and those results will be presented to council early in the new year. The contractor was Gallagher and Associates, who actually did the salary review and pay equity review 5 years ago. And I believe we had allocated in this year's budget approximately $50,000, and I don't believe that it will be near the $50,000 mark when the contract is concluded.
Further?
Okay, so further to that, 5 years ago, did Gallagher do it then?
Yes.
So my point being this, when a pay equity exercise is undertaken, they make recommendations to level out employment rates, pay rates between employees doing individual jobs. And we have a grid that was adopted some years ago with respect to how we move people up in the progressionary stage, so why does it change now? I mean, we take into account the cost of living and those other things, but why would that change? I mean, if we bought into the program 5 years ago, and this is what he recommended, and we adopted that, why do we do it again?
The pay equity review, it's that we do it again because we have different employees. And so when we have a different employee, that employee, if it's a female employee, has to be compared to the male positions of equal value. So it's just an analysis that we do usually every 5 years in accordance with our policy to ensure that we're still in line with the pay equity legislation. So we have those grids, and we have those grids and the tool that was used to place those positions within the grids for just that reason, to ensure that there's minimal adjustments just based on any new employees who may come into the municipality, to ensure that there's actually a male comparator for those female positions.
Yeah, I have some familiarity with pay equity and understand the need for it, but I guess, and we'll hear more about this, in the new year when we talk about how much of an adjustment needs to be made. But I guess what troubles me is the fact that, we pay somebody $50,000 to come in and do this pay equity adjustment, and we did 5 years ago, and they're going to recommend, my guess is, that we have wage increases throughout. And I understand you have to have the comparator between male and female employees doing specific jobs. But unless we change the classification of that job, then whether a female does it or a male does it, unless we change the classification, the evaluation has already been there. It was there 5 years ago, unless we've created a new job, correct? Again, we'll see when it comes out in January, but I have my skepticism about pay equity because honestly, I have sat through it personally about 5 or 6 times, and I know what it means. And what it means is large wage increases in some areas.
Just to be clear about what the work that was done in the salary review. It also looked at some positions that had not been graded in accordance with the plan appropriately, perhaps, just to ensure that they had been placed in the correct pay grade. They looked at new jobs, changes to any position. So if there's been an increase in substantive duties of a role, they looked at that and whether it still fell within the appropriate pay grade. There was also a market analysis conducted to ensure that we're in line with other municipalities, similar to what I described with our part-time, but we did that in-house. And then the pay equity review was a part of all of that. So it wasn't just, the contract was not just for a pay equity analysis, but she will be attending to explain the process and her findings to council. So you'll have the opportunity to ask those kinds of questions to her as well.
Mr. Neufeld.
These sorts of analysis are quite important, especially going forward as our baby boomers are retiring, especially within the municipal sector and our surrounding municipalities. We need to remain competitive in our pay. There are positions whose value has changed simply because the environment has changed. And there's one, for example, the manner in which climate change, the frequency of storms, the severity of those storms have put a greater emphasis on things like drainage, for example. Whereas 20 years ago, maybe there wasn't the same sort of value attributed to that sort of a position. So these sorts of analyses are not, as Ruth said, not just for pay equity, but for our municipality, it's equally important to make sure that our employees are fairly paid so that we can compete with the other municipalities. We've gone through a fairly good changeover already, and well, we talked about a retirement potentially for 2018. Maybe there are a couple, but other municipalities are facing wholesale changes in their senior administration, for example. And well, if you look at our municipality, we've experienced some of that too. We have to be prepared so that we aren't poached by other municipalities. So we need to make sure that we're paying fairly, and we've created a culture where people want to come to work. They are being valued here, not just through pay, but through the way that they're being treated and valued.
Further?
Peter, and I believe I understand what you're saying. To my point, the largest number of our employees are within the Board of Works, the Fire Department, the Water Department. I mean, other than the people that administer those departments, are the employees evaluated under pay equity? No. And so they're left with a situation whereby they have to sit down and try to negotiate a wage increase. So it goes back to what I talked about quite a while ago today when I talked about, I've looked at the percentages of wage increases at every single level that we've talked about across the board, understanding that some, are progressionary increases as we go. But when you look, whether it be the Board of Works or the Fire Department, they're 1.2 or 1.8 or 1.9, as council's 1.8, but they're the only ones that are. So back to my pay equity question, and again, we can deal with this more. You know that I've sat through pay equity exercises a number of times before, and to me, it's necessary, but it's also a format where a number of employees are going to get more than a 1.9 or 1.8% wage increase.
Okay. Any other questions in regard to, where are we? General government budget? Yes, you do? Okay. No more questions? So we'll move on to finance and business services.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Finance Department services provide services and programs to Leamington ratepayers and all municipal departments. The services include property taxation, revenue billing, and collection for the entire corporation, treasury, debt and investment management, payroll, accounting, reporting, and analysis. Finance also provides the asset inventory management for the tangible capital assets through citywide. In addition, all of the accounting and business functions for Union Water are provided for within finance. So for staffing levels within finance, we have 10 full-time staff positions included in the 2018 budget. The complement has remained the same as in prior year, but the finance team structure has changed a little bit, as well as there are several progression increases within the finance department. So this has been done because we've reviewed the duties. There's a lot of changing legislation and reporting demands, as well as succession plans and staff development that are required within the department. So it required a composition change, and I think we're structured properly to move forward now. In 2017, all reporting requirements were completed successfully and on time. The 2017 budget was prepared and approved, and now we are looking at 2018 all within the last 10 months. So excellent on the finance team's part and everyone's. All capital asset schedules were maintained. The financial information return was submitted at the end of May. And of course, we received a clean audit opinion again from our financial auditors, and that is primarily due to the three ladies sitting at the back of the room right there. So thank you to the three of them. So in the 2018 finance budget, the changes from 2018, over 2017 are really in three areas. One is in the recoveries, and that's a recovery from the Building Services Department for services that are provided for building. There's an offsetting expense in the building department that Paul spoke about earlier. There's a reduction in miscellaneous revenue for conservative estimates on interest revenues because of the continued capital investment, or the level of the continued capital investment in 2018, as well as I think it's very prudent budgeting to be conservative with interest revenues. We've reduced that. And then we've also it was a one-time cost in professional services for changes to our tangible capital asset software that reduced professional services by $25,000. And that's it.
Thank you. Questions? I see none. Let's keep moving. Information technology.
I'll let Dave take care of this one.
Thanks, Mayor Patterson. IT Services is responsible for all voice and data technologies for the corporation, as well as all GIS services and our mapping infrastructure. The only changes that we did from last year to this year, basically on the operating side, it's much the same with some new software being proposed for a couple of different departments that we'll be looking at and investigating throughout the year. The big one on the capital side will be, well, there's two, refreshing all desktop hardware, all PCs, laptops, or whatever infrastructure we have in all the vehicles, all our mobile equipment, or that fleet will all be refreshed, as well as we're going to look at or investigate further connecting fiber between our facilities here in the rec center, as well as laying the infrastructure down through to Seacliff Park, the waterfront, and to the marina. That's the big capital project being proposed for the coming year. The slight increase on the operating side is basically maintaining software, as well as all of our software contracts have gone up slightly, so that's reflected there, and we're looking at doing an internal security audit from a outside source. So that's the increase on the operating side, and then the proposed capital projects.
Okay. Questions from council? Councillor Jacobs.
Dave, do we have fiber optics to the facility here now at this time? Are they still coming?
We're connected to the county via fiber to this facility. So we connect back to the county and to the other municipalities through shared infrastructure there. What we're looking at doing is from this facility to the rec center, to our main facility, which is our disaster recovery site. It's putting that fiber in there to allow for, we're getting to a point where the data that we have over here, we can't replicate through our wireless infrastructure at the rec center. To put it in perspective, we can do daily backups, for all of our systems for in a 6-hour window. But to replicate, a complete replication takes over a day. So we can't have true disaster recovery when we're limited by the wireless connection in here. So by putting fiber in, will allow us increased throughput, but it'll also give us flexibility to do projects such as provide Wi-Fi, and this can all be discussed and brought forward later. But bring Wi-Fi or other technology solutions to the area, along the trail, down by the waterfront, down to the marina area, and whatnot.
Now, when you install fiber connection or communications with, say, the Shire Complex or the marina or whatever facility you're going to, these are all hardwired, I guess, and then how do you gain access, or do you have to contract with Bell or somebody, use their poles or conduits, or like, it seems like an involved process, and for $500,000, I guess it would be, but,
Well, yeah, no, the intent is to install the infrastructure and have the municipality own the infrastructure. So if we put conduit in the ground and put a physical wire, put a physical fiber in through that conduit, it will connect our facilities. Nobody can gain access to that. It's encrypted and secured connection from site to site. So once we have that connection, you can open up different access if you so choose to the public or other entities if we need to look at that. The primary purpose between the municipal building and the rec center is strictly for our disaster recovery and making sure that we can have replicated data at a reasonable time frame.
this will be a private system terminating at this location. Like all them will terminate, come here, right?
Yeah, it's like you're plugging in a laptop to your wall to get to
Okay.
internet access.
Now with the possibility of fiber optics coming to the municipality, I guess there's been interest from different organizations they're supposed to be bringing in. So would we tap into that at a later date, or do we still say as a sole source on our own? Where I'm going at, rather than spend the money, do we wait till they come in and then we tap into their system, or do we just, you know what I mean?
Talk coming in, having external companies come in to do that. We've seen no progress to this date right now. But if we were to, if they are to come in and provide their own infrastructure, you're going to get into a paid service, right? It's not like we would have to do some kind of a monthly service for a portion of the speed that putting in a direct line between our facilities will have. And when you're doing, when we're talking about municipal data and replication, you're going to want to make sure that you have security in place. So by putting a private link between this facility and the rec center, will provide you that private link that nobody can tap into, nobody will have access to. Looking at providing access or providing these solutions throughout the other part of the municipality. If we were to do a cost analysis on buying a service for a specific area, like the waterfront or the marina, it may be cost effective to look at that. To date, though, we've got no update from any of the companies coming in to put that infrastructure in. So the primary part of this capital project is to put that infrastructure in between these two buildings. We were just going to put the conduit in from the rec center down throughout Seacliff Park and the marina. As well, I believe Erie Street reconstruction is going, they're doing some, they're ripping out the road down there as well. So part of that is a good time to put our own conduit in while they've got that road ripped up.
Okay. Councillor Dunn?
Through you, Your Worship. You mentioned internal security. What's that involve?
Well, internal security, like I said, when we're talking municipal data that we're passing through between facilities, you have to ensure that everything is encrypted and it's secure so that no non-corporate entity can have access to that. So it's without getting too technical, it's protocols that we'll put in place to ensure that our data, the integrity of the data between the two sites, we'll make sure. That's essentially what I was referring to.
Okay. No further questions from council? Then, Ms. Percy, are you ready with a motion?
That Finance and Business Services 2018 budget be adopted.
Moved by Councillor Jacobs, support by the Deputy Mayor. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap it up, tomorrow we'll start at 9 o'clock, Culture and Recreation Services. Fair enough? So we'll do the Complex Marina Library and Cultural Services, and then we'll do the Office of the CAO. And we'll spend hours discussing our grants. And then have closing remarks and be out of here. Maybe, who knows? Okay. So I need a motion to adjourn. Deputy, or, sorry. Yep, the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Hammond. All in favor? And carried. Thank you very much, staff members.